Hello, this is Mickey. How's everybody doing today? Well, today I'd like to continue with our series on masking tools in Lightroom, and today we're going to concentrate on the brush tool. Now, by design, the brush tool seems like kind of a simplistic tool, but in actuality, it's a very complex tool and has many capabilities. You can use it simply to apply a mask freehand. You can apply effects like atmosphere and light. It's a really great tool at cleaning up other masks. You can use it for dodging and burning. And more importantly, you can use it to apply artistic effects to your photograph. Alright, now let's just jump right in and see what all the parts are to this brush tool. I'm going to change our screen to just a white screen so we can see how we apply effects and the tools that we can use to apply them. We want to be on the Develop module, the masking icon right here, and we're going to choose brush. As you can see, you also have a K, which is the shortcut key to bring up a brush tool. I'm going to click on the brush tool, and when we do, we get a new panel titled brush, and these are all the settings that we can use to change how we're going to apply our effect with the brush. To start out with, we have size, and that's all it is. As we move back and forth with this slider, our brush gets smaller and gets larger. Right? If we hover over and use our bracket key, you can see a bracket key, left bracket key makes the brush smaller, right bracket key makes the brush bigger. The next setting is feather, and feather controls the edge of your brush. A feather at 0 has no gradient to the edge of your brush, when we call that a hard brush. A feather at 100% is what we call a soft brush, and it has a very large gradient. So let's just look at that so we understand. So with our feather at 0, we should have no gradient to the edge of the brush. And as I stroke across, and let's change the exposure and highlights here so we can see a nice black brush. We'll turn the overlay off. All right, so this is a 0% feather, very harsh edge to it. We'll take it out to 50%. Draw another line across, and you can see we got a nice soft edge and a nice dark center. And if we take it out to 100%, again, we get a nice dark center, but our edge has a much greater gradient to it. So that's what feather is. All right, now let's clean this up, and we're going to go to our next setting, which is the flow. Let's make sure all these are set to make us a black line. Now flow, the description of flow is how much effect do you want to apply with one stroke or per stroke, all right? So when we have it set at 100%, we're saying I want the full effect, as we see here, all black in one stroke. So as we stroke across, you can see that it's a full black. And let me take the feather down so we can really see it. 100% flow, all right? 100% flow means all I want to do is apply the full effect with one stroke. Now, when I change it to 50, we're only get half the effect. All right, so that's our flow at 50%. So it would take 2 or more strokes to bring the 100% in. It's kind of a misnomer. When we're at 50%, it doesn't mean that that's a 50% line and all it would take is 2 strokes to bring to 100, because you can see I just hit 2 and it's still not full. It's probably about 5 or 6 strokes. All right, but you can keep stroking across and getting the effect deeper and deeper. And this allows you to apply an effect at a much slower rate so you can make it look more realistic. All right. If we look at flow at 25%, it gets even lighter. All right. So it will take more passes across the screen for you to get the 100% effect. So here we'd have to go like 15 or 20 to get the effect that we do at 100%. All right. So let's take some of these away, and now let's look at the last one, which is density. Density is what we call a limiter. It's only going to allow that percentage of effect to be applied no matter how many times we brush across the screen. All right. So with density and flow at 100, as we apply the effect, we get the full effect. If I change the density to 50, no matter what I have the flow set at, I'm only going to get 50%. And no matter how many times I brush across the screen, it will never go higher than 50%. And this is another way to apply an effect but protect yourself from getting too much effect applied. So I can take my flow down to 25% and leave my effect at 50, and then I can start applying the effect to my photograph, but I don't have to worry about going overboard, because as much as I move across my screen here and brush across, the effect never gets more than 50%. All right, so you can control how fast it goes down with flow, and how much is going to be allowed is density. All right, hope that makes sense. All right, let's move over to this picture here, and let's talk about these settings that are around our sliders in our brush tool. The first one is brush A and B, which means you can have two different brushes that have preset by you so that you can move between the two depending on what you want to do. So our A brush, we're going to make this kind of large, and it's not going to have any feather to it. It's going to have a flow of 100% and a density of 100%. All right, and then we want to have a softer brush. So we'll click on B, and we'll make it a little smaller. We'll give it a big feather, a mid flow, and our density at 100%. So those are our two brushes. So if we go to A, let's change our exposure. We can put a change down like this, and then we can go to B, and we have a smaller brush that has less flow and a bigger feather. Now, you can move between these brushes with a shortcut key of the /, and that's down by your Shift key on most keyboards. So if we want to move back to A, just click that / key, brush, and when you want your smaller brush, / key again, and it moves to B, just like that. Now we actually have another brush, and that's called the erase brush. So when we click on erase, we now get a minus in the center of our brush. See that the minus means it's an erase tool, and we can set it to however we want, because it's kind of like our third brush. So we'll have a medium feather, we'll have a 75% flow, and now when I paint on, it takes away that effect. All right. Now there's also a shortcut for this. So let's go back to our A key, A brush, and we can paint on. And then if we hit our Option key or Alt on a PC, it then changes it to that minus to the erase brush, and now we can erase. So let go of the Option key and you can paint, then hold your Option key down, and you now can erase. And you'll know that you're in the erase mode because your brush will have a minus in the center of it. All right? All right, the next box we'll look at is the invert. It's very simple. All it is inverting your mask. So light becomes dark, dark becomes light. So if we click the invert, you can see it inverts. The masked area is now unaffected, and the whole picture is affected. If we click it again, only the areas that we painted in are affected, and the rest of the picture is unaffected. Just nothing outstanding about that, just invert. All right, the last thing we have is Automask, and this is probably one of the most important tools of the brush. And let's clean up, let's reset this. And we're going to grab a brush. I'm going to turn the Automask on. We're going to have a mid feather, a flow, and density. All right. Automask is that special feature we have with the brush that only applies the effect where the plus mark is covering. So when the plus mark is hovering over this color, that's the only place the effect will be applied. It doesn't matter if your brush, you can see here, half my brush is out of that color. Doesn't matter. Whatever color is resting underneath the plus mark, that's the only place it will be affected. So let me turn the exposure up, and we're going to brush across here, and you can see nothing flows into the sky. Now you see a little happening right down here, and that's because some of this color also is in this area below. So if you were just wanting to paint the bales, then you want to make your brush just small enough that it only stays within the bales. All right, so that's how Automask works. Really good tool for applying effect. It's also really good for cleaning up a mask. So let's say that I'm going to turn Automask off, and I'm going to apply an effect here, and I just get really sloppy. Right now, all I have to do is turn Automask on, and I'm going to go to this mask and I say I want to subtract with my brush. I'm going to make sure that Automask is on, and I'm just going to make sure my brush stays in this area like this, and it takes away that effect that we kind of overpainted with. And because Automask is protecting that area only of the blue and the white of the clouds, it doesn't flow into the gold of the hay bales. So that's just the power of Automask. It just makes it just the best thing to use. Now there is also a shortcut key for Automask. So let's change our exposure to a negative, and we're going to apply another brush here, and a small brush, and we're just brushing on changing our exposure in these hay bales like this. All right, and we're staying away from the red edge. Let's turn the Automask off because we don't want to get into the sky, because if I have the Automask brush off and I get into the sky, it's going to change or add the effect there. So now instead of going over to the Automask and clicking, I can hold the Command key down and start painting, and you can see Automask gets turned on automatically. So if you're painting without Automask and you want it to be clicked on real quick, just hold your Command key and then make sure the plus mark stays only on the color that you want to affect, and you'll get the full effect of Automask when using your brush. Now, when you're doing that Command click for Automask, you will not see the Automask check mark come on. You just have to know that if you're holding the Command or Control on a PC, that the Automask is in effect. All right, let go of the Command, yep, and there you go. You see it gets out of hand. Hold the Command key, make sure everything stays the same. Now, we made a little mistake here. You can do the same thing with the Command key up in the sky by holding the Command key down. That means you're using Automask. Then let's hold the Option key down. It changed it to a subtract, and now we can subtract. So Option Command makes it Automask on the subtract also. Just another little handy tool to make your work go a little quicker. Alright, now that we've gone through the nuts and bolts of this tool, let's go do some demos to show you how effective this tool is to clean up and enhance your photograph. We're going to start with this picture. This will be a cleanup. We're going to go here to Auto, brighten it up a little bit. Then we're going to go to our mask, and we're going to choose a sky mask. And you can see it did a pretty good job, but it's kind of missing some areas in here. It didn't get filled in. And you can actually see that a little better if you go down here to white on black, and you can see there should be more white in this area between the limbs, but the masking just from the sky masking just didn't get in there. So let's change this back to color overlay and decrease our exposure, and it becomes real evident here. Now this is more than we probably need, but it's just a good way to show the masking. So we want to clean this up. The best way to do it is that we want to add to the sky mask. So we're going to click add, and we're going to do it with a brush. We're going to get a big brush, bigger than probably you've seen before. We're going to make sure Automask is on. We're going to have kind of a medium feather, and we're going to have flow and density set to 100%. So we want to have the center, our plus mark, in an area that is representative of the sky mask, and we're going to click. Make sure that the area you want to clean is inside the inner circle. All right, and now we click, and you can see right there, see how well that cleaned it up. We're going to come over here, we're going to make it even bigger, and we're going to click in the blue area, clean that up, and let's make it a little bigger and click on the cloud to catch those areas there. You can see how well it's cleaned it up. Very good. Now let's take our exposure and bring it back down, and now you can see much better masking within the tree just by a couple clicks with a brush using Automask. And from this point you could probably go over to point color, grab this, get part of the blue sky, and we could bring the blues in a little better. We could come to our tones and maybe bring up the whites to help the clouds a little bit. And there we have a much better mask with the sky by just cleaning up a little bit with the brush. Alright, in this next demo we're going to use straight line masking with our brush tool and maybe add a little glow using the brush tool with an expanding mask. We want to go to our masking brush, And we're going to have the flow and density set at 100% and the feather at about 40%. And we're going to size our brush about the size of this first step. Now, we're going to be darkening the leading edges of these steps because they should be a little darker and add a little contrast to the scene. So we want to put our brush and size the brush to about the size of the step and click once. And then we want to hold our shift key down, resize our brush to where it's going to end, hold our shift key down and click, and it draws a complete line straight across. We'll do the same thing on the next step. Size our brush about the size of the step where it starts, click once, move your brush to the other side, resize, hold your shift key down and click. We'll do it one more time. Resize the brush to about the size of the step, click once, move to the other side, resize, and click once more. Once we have our masks in place, we then can apply our effect. So let's go to tone and this will bring the exposure down just a little bit. So as you can see, we're adding more contrast to the front edges of these steps and actually adds a little depth to the picture. Now, of course, you will want to go through all these, which can get kind of tedious, but using the select, hold shift, select again, you can get those done straight, really neat, and really fast. Now, you notice if I bring the exposure down, it came across the subject's legs, and we want to get rid of that. So what we would do is we would go to subtract, select subject, and it takes it away, and now we have a really good change. Let's change the exposure a little bit, about like this. Now let's just add a little light coming down from up above, going to her. So again, we're going to make a new brush. We're going to start right here. I'll make it kind of big. And we want 100% feather on this, flow and density at 100%. So we're going to put our light brush right here. That's where the light's coming from. Click once. We're going to go down to the bottom and make our brush really big because the sun is expanding or the light's expanding. Hold our shift key down and click once more. And there we get a nice sunbeam coming across. Now we had the Automask on, so it didn't hit it as well as I wanted to. But let's just move on anyway. So going to brighten it up a little bit, about like this. Again, because the overlay is hitting some of our subject, we want to go up here on mask number 2, subtract, subject. So now it's not really hitting her, it's just lighting up the areas behind her. As you can see here, just gives it a little more effect. And I don't really like it up here, so we could subtract with a linear gradient and just bring it down just a little bit, about like this. And if we look at our overlay, you can see it's taking it away. I don't want it to be real hot up at the top there. And now when we look at this, let's turn our overlay off. Now we have the nice light coming in behind her. And then if we look at our mask 1, that's the steps, we can add more depth by changing how dark the leading edges of these steps are. And like I said, you would need to go run them all the way up to the top and get a better effect of the dark leading edges of the steps. All right, so that's demo number 2. All right, on this picture, we're going to do several things. We're going to add a little atmosphere, a little fog. We're going to bring up the colors in the field a little bit, and we're going to do some dodging and burning on the hillside to show how the light brightens up the field in certain areas. So the first thing we want to do is that we want to add or enhance this fog that's on the photograph. So I'm going to go to my radial gradient, and I'm going to draw a big gradient across the whole picture. The center is where the fog will be the thickest, and I'll just make that just about right there. Now to bring in the fog, we want to bring down the dehaze a little bit. Want to bring down the clarity just a little bit. And we can even go to curves under the luminosity slider, luminosity range, grab the black point and start bringing that up. And when you do, it kind of enhances that fog up into the hills a little bit. If you want to move it around, make it higher or lower, you can grab your pen and just move this around till you get it just about where you want it. The next thing we want to do to make it more realistic is that we're going to go to this mask and say intersect with a brush. Now we're going to set our feather at about 50% and our flow, I'll bring that to about 30%. Now the secret of an intersect with the brush is that no effects are applied until you start clicking. As soon as I click on the picture, all the effects are going to go away. I'll click right here. It goes away. Now it's up to you to put the effect back in place at the level you want it to be. So I'm just going to start swirling around like this, kind of haphazardly, because fog is not very uniform usually. So we're just going to make it ourselves, maybe do some up movements like this, till you get the fog exactly where you want it to be. Once you get it in place, you can then use your mount slider, and if you want to make it a little more dense, you can do it like that. So here we have our fog. All right, now let's add a little light on the hills here. So we are going to go to our brush, a new brush, and we're going to have the flow at about 20% and 90% on our flow, and feather. The flow 29%, 94% on the feather. And we're going to go to our tone, and we're just going to increase it just a little bit and maybe add just a little gold color to it. And we want to hit those areas that the sun is coming in, and this is one of the areas here. So I'm just going to lightly brush in this area like this, and don't worry about it, you can always change it. I just want to get a little effect in place first, and maybe a little bit over here, make my brush smaller and hit this area over here about like this. There's a little area right here coming down the hill about like this, and maybe a little bit on this little ridge. Okay, you could have your overlay on, so it'll show you where you were painting. I'll turn the overlay off. Now let's use our mount slider. We're going to bring up these areas because the sun is kind of sneaking through here a little bit. So you could use your tone to bring it up a little bit, maybe the whites, and then control it completely with your mount slider. About like that. So now we brought the fog in, put a little sun on the hillside, and now what we can do is maybe brighten up some of these fields of green. So what we want to do is make a mask based on color range. We're just going to click on this screen right here. You can see it looks like it caught pretty much all the greens with the overlay. And again, let's brighten the exposure up a little bit, add a little whites. And now we're only going to paint in where we want the fields to be a little brighter. All right. So that means we're going to intersect with a brush. And remember, as soon as I touch the photograph, those effects are going to go away. All right. So I'll click here, and they all go away. And now I can make my brush the size I want for that field. Let's see, about like this. And I'll turn the flow up to about 50%. And now I just want to paint in the field where I wanted that exposure to be increased. So this center field was 1. So I'm keeping my cross. Let's turn on Automask, and I'll keep my cross on this green so it doesn't hit any place else. And maybe a little bit down here and over here. I'm going to leave this field alone, and I'm going to hit this upper field up here, about like this. You can put on your overlay so you can see where you're painting, because we're going to make the change in exposure after we put these masks in place. All right, so now let's turn the overlay off, and let's increase our exposure, about like that. Maybe add a little contrast. Maybe turn the whites down a little bit. So there, now if we look at our field, before, after, before, and after. So with the brush mask, we're able to add a little atmosphere, add a little dodging and burning up in the hills to show where the sun's coming in, and enhance the color of the fields where the sheep are grazing. All right, let's move on to the last demo. All right, for this last demo, I just want to show how we can use a brush to finely clean up the line between the sky and the water using just the feathered edge of a brush to make the changes. All right, to start off with this picture, let's just brighten it or straighten it up a little bit, and let's just use a basic auto to brighten it up a little bit. And then we're going to hit the sky mask. And if we look at it, it looks pretty good, although you can see some magenta and red in the water, which means the mask wasn't completely correct. And if we go up here to the white on black, we can see it right here. All right, so to clean up this mask, we're going to keep in this mode right here. We are going to subtract from the water. So we want to subtract this sky mask from the water. So we hit subtract with the brush. We want to have the flow and the density at 100%, and we want the feather at 100%. And here's the key to this. You can see my cursor right here. I want to be able to keep the horizon between the inner and outer circle. And I realize when I am using this software to record, it might not look exactly right, but I am keeping the horizon in my brush between the inner and outer circle. Remember, between the inner circle and the outer circle, we go from 100 to 0% on the feather. And that'll give us a really slight change, while the inner circle will take care of all the masking in the water. So we just want to start masking now, everything at 100, and we just want to keep the horizon in the feathered area of the circle. That's between the inner and outer circle. The inner circle is taking care of the mask below. All right, and we're getting a little of the subtraction from the sky, but it's so mild, it helps it blend even better. So I've moved across the whole way, taking out all the masking that was in the water. All right, so now let's go back and change to color overlay, and we're going to turn the overlay off, and you can see that it looks very nice, very clean sky with a nice blend because we use that feathered edge. And we can then do a couple changes to the sky, add a little clarity like this, and then we can go up to this mask because it is so nice with a good separation, and we can duplicate and invert, and that will give us a good mask of the foreground. And we can brighten this up a little bit. So now we have, just by making a good clean mask between the sky and the foreground, we get a nice mask of the foreground as a duplicate and inverse. And then we can probably grab it like a radial gradient because the sun's coming in over here. And let's just put a really light radial gradient here, about like this, and increase the exposure. And we get a nice little sun flare coming in from the right, going across the scene. Let's turn our masks off, our before, after, before, and after. And if we look at our masks for the sky, you can see that even when we turn it off, you can't see a lot changing in the water, which is exactly what we wanted. By using the feathered edge of your brush as you go along the edge, it just makes a very nice transition between the masked area and the unmasked area and give it just a natural look. Well, I hope this lesson and these demos helped you out. If anybody has any questions about using the brush and the intersecting, adding, subtracting, be sure and drop me an email or a comment on my channel, and I'll be sure to get back to you as soon as I can. I will talk to you all real soon.